when I see this picture, I can't help but think of other pictures I've seen over the years, all throughout my life. Usually they were pictures that I saw on brochures for nonprofits or Save the Children with some sort of request of me and some sort of message about this person being in trouble. And there's a, it's like a Mona Lisa smile there, right? She's a little bit smiling, but there's a sadness in her eyes. I don't know. The pictures that I've seen that come to mind when I see this are ones that conjure emotions of pity, of urgency, of guilt, of this frantic, oh my gosh, I need to do something because this is a real person apparently, or so I'm told, and she has, I'm being told a story about her, but she represents so many others. So the emotions that have come up for me, often when I've seen a picture like this, like you can see someone bending in the background working, right? Like when I've seen this have been, to be honest, if you can categorize emotions, and yes, I took touchy-feely, so I know you're not supposed to do this, but whatever. They're negative emotions, right? Like they're happy, sad, they're over here. They're, oh, what do we do now? I feel a nervousness and a tension, right? So I'm gonna go back to my other picture. Well, no, let's do both of them. So what if then you zoom out a little bit and you see this as the picture? There's a lot more going on there. You get context, you get color, and you see this woman in a scene that tells you a whole lot more about what she might be doing with her day, or at least her hour, when this was taken. And for me, when I see this, those negative emotions aren't so much there. There are different emotions that come up. There's curiosity, there's respect, that looks like a lot of the heavy thing to hold. Maybe she carried it there, and I'm guessing, but the things that I guess are not things that make me feel pity, and not things that make me feel sad. They make me feel kind of curious and sort of intrigued, and I want to know who she is, and I want to understand what's going on there. And I have a lot of other questions for her. When I see this picture surrounded by the information that is provided on Kiva, this is she's a borrower on our site. When I see her in that context with that frame, again, it's even more of what happened the last time. It's more of, whoa, this is an entrepreneur. I'm calling her an entrepreneur. I have a name with her. She has her own name, and it's up there. It's not just a nameless face. She lives in a particular place. She has a business name. She has a nickname, Lizzie, right? Not Elizabeth, Lizzie. She needs $900. It's a lot of money to me even, but it's certainly a lot of money to her. She has plans. She has a story. She has the emotions that I get when I see that are ones that are very different from the ones that I had in other pictures. And growing up over the years, sponsored children too, and was involved with a lot of nonprofits where the messages feel bad and therefore act, right? This is a different feeling for me. So it's funny, I start my talks this way and I usually end them this way. The sort of end game for me, we can talk the whole hour about Kiva and how we've created this new product and this new flow of capital, zero interest debt to microfinance institutions that allows them, to build their capacity and do more of what they do, and how that, we can talk about the economy and the interest rates there, and we can talk about Kiva's revenue model and how we're a sustainable nonprofit. We can talk about all the numbers and all the other things. To be honest with you, I feel a little bit like, not a poser, but like, yes, I came to business school, but the things that I really care about are people. And the numbers are really interesting, but they're not really what makes my heart sing. And they're not what I think is really the end game to change. What I think is, what I hope for with Kiva is, yeah, it's awesome when money goes back and forth, but if Jennifer's two sons can start to have impressions and images of people in this frame, in this context, the scope is so different than I had growing up. And if they can start to just assume better things, more positive things, assume that there's more possibility for this person's life than I was told or than I received that information about when I was growing up, if they can do that, I think that's what changes the world, when people think of each other differently and really deep down in their gut believe, because of a lifetime of getting data in, they really deep down believe that more is possible for this person or that group of people that we saw before. That's when awesome things start to happen. Everything else is just sort of logistics in my mind. It's not that difficult. Like, the other stuff is fun and interesting and a nice intellectual exercise, but none of that happens unless and until you really believe and think differently about this human being, right? So that's sort of the that's that's like the grand finale of my talk, right? So that's what I would say at the end usually, but I wanted to say that up now because we're talking about stories and framing and all of that. So my story, go back to this one. So same with this group. When you see them like this, you can think all these different things. When you see them like this, you see their names, you see what they need, you see what they're doing. You learn that Wilkista Agutu is an average Kenyan woman. She's 46, she has 3 children. She has 1 orphan child of her late brother. There's so much in those 2 sentences. And by the way, we don't train really any of our field partners to write in a particular way. We just let them tell the story as best they can, as close as they can to what the entrepreneurs themselves would say. Anyway, so I'm going to tell you my story of Kiva because, yeah, that's my story. And you can hear my own personal story, and I think that'll tell you a lot about what Kiva is and why it started and why we do what we do and the way that we do it. So, like I said, growing up, I had all these experiences that exposed me to poverty, relative poverty, abject poverty. The first real thing, and the way I talked about possibility just now. A lot of the most important moments in my life were times when what I thought was possible changed. And either I chose to change those walls or something came crashing in and blew one of the walls out and said, no, 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 you're wrong. It's this or something. So in high school, I went with a church group to Haiti. And I had heard about poverty. I did my child sponsorship and all that good stuff. I read the newspapers. Like I knew there's poverty out there. But going to Haiti and meeting people that were my age, I'm a senior in high school, you know what we're all like as seniors in high school. There's a certain way we look at the world and I thought my world was this big. To meet other people my age who spent their whole days working so that they could eat, and that was it, that was the point of their days, that was why they were getting up and doing what they were doing every day, was really hard for me to understand. And it was sort of a negative possibility sort of changer for me. I thought, wow, I didn't realize that was possible. I didn't really fully realize that. So I sort of went back home, and a few weeks later, it's senior prom, and I'm in my dress in this like limo going to senior proms at senior high school and thinking, wait a minute, that was not a different world. That was one plane flight away. How is this possible? How is it possible that this is my life? But I know now people who have a very, very different life than me, and I'm going off and spending my evening just having fun, and maybe they worked hard enough today and things worked out enough for them to be able to eat. Like, how is this possible? So I started to have sort of this crisis of, I don't understand, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm afraid. I didn't know how to put all that together. And I didn't even know if it was okay to like have fun at senior prom or if I should go do something, at every waking hour to try to help these people that I met now and knew, and they had names and faces. So that was like moment number 1 for me. Another moment was, and I went to school and I studied philosophy and poetry and political science and never business because I thought, why would I study business? I want to help people. What does that have to do with anything? So I thought philosophy would teach me how to think about ideas differently, and it certainly did. It was another possibility expanding sort of experience for me. I mean, you go into class and you start questioning things that are so fundamental and so crazy to question, like how do we really know the walls behind us when we turn around? I mean, you question the basics and you question what's possible and how you know what you know and all that good stuff. And I loved that. And I wanted to learn how to ask the best questions. I studied political science because I thought, well, I think, who's making the rules out there? Again, business never crossed my mind. I thought, well, governments must be making the rules. They're not doing a very good job because look what's happening in Haiti, for example. I want to figure out these rules and fix them. So I studied political science. I studied poetry just because it was beautiful and I loved it. Those are my 3 things. Then in my junior year, I went on Semester at Sea. Has anyone heard of this program? Okay, so awesome. Has anyone gone? Yoo-hoo, Semester at Sea. So basically you get on this ship and you go around the world, and it's like the world's ultimate field trip. You visit like 13 countries, and before you get there, you study about them. And anyway, it's phenomenal. And in as much as Haiti sort of did this to what I thought was possible in the world, and sort of gave me a spectrum of, whoa, people have very different lives than I do, and I think I'm here on the spectrum. Like, I've been given everything I can possibly think of, and so many people have so much less. Wow. In as much as Haiti gave me that spectrum, Semester at Sea sort of blew that out and made it multidimensional. I still felt like I almost always won out on being lucky and blessed, but there was so much out there, and it sort of expanded the way I saw the world. It was also a chance for me to be uncomfortable. I felt part of my frustration was I didn't feel deserving. I didn't know why I'd been given this really comfortable life, and I wanted to feel uncomfortable. I couldn't think of anything I'd really failed at when I'd tried. I was always in high school and college, I was always class or student body president every year, and I always felt like I had this little stamp of approval to like say what I thought and my opinions mattered. Like, I felt like my life was perfect, and I wanted to feel uncomfortable, but so I didn't know what to do. And on semester C, there's a funny tradition where when you cross the equator for the first time, you shave your head, so we're gonna blow by that. And so I shaved my head, and I decided I'm gonna be uncomfortable. I'm gonna make myself experience discomfort. And so I shaved my head, and I like tried to do things as differently as I could for that time on semester C. I didn't do any like extracurricular activities. I lived life very differently for a little while. And it was really good for me. I learned a lot about patience and vanity and all sorts of stuff. But I was questioning, who am I in the world? What's my story? Do I feel okay about my story? And what does it mean with everyone else out there? So anyway, this will pick up pace story. So this is a few years out of school. So I graduate. I still don't really know what to do. I feel like this random white middle-class girl from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania that kind of knows French and likes writing. Like, what are my skills? I don't know. But I knew I was interested in international development. But again, nonprofit international development, what kind of focus is that? Like, okay, so they're both defined by what they're not. So I didn't know how to proceed. And I actually, it's funny because, you know, in business school you talk about like rational consumer behavior and markets and all these things. And I don't think a lot of my life decisions have been that rational. I fell in love, and I moved to California right after graduation, and I moved onto Sand Hill Road. Didn't have a bike or a job or a car. I walked across campus, and my debut at the Stanford Business School was day 2 in California ever for me, and I handed my resume out and got a job as a temporary administrative assistant in the PMP for someone on medical leave. And I was a secretary here for a little while, and I ended up staying for 3 years here as staff. Now, what was great about this was I just took the job because I needed to pay my rent, and it sounded kind of interesting. But what was great was my job evolved pretty quickly, and I got to do other things, like the first Global Philanthropy Forum. That was awesome. And more or less, imagine being here, not having to do the coursework, but getting to sit in on like classes and like go to speakers at lunchtime and at 5:15 in Bishop, and anytime there was something awesome, you get to go listen in. How great is that? So I spent 3 years getting to do that, and in fact, planning some of the events and having an excuse to talk to amazing thought leaders. So that just, you can imagine, again, having no exposure to business up until that point, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. Time value of money. What if this is, who knew? Like, it was a new language, a new vocabulary. Everything was just blowing my mind. So one of the people that I heard speak about 2.5 years in was Dr. Muhammad Yunus, this guy that I thought I maybe heard about before. This was 3 years before he would win the Nobel Peace Prize for his work pioneering microfinance with Grameen Bank. But basically, he came to campus. It was like an S-152. It was a last-minute thing. I went and I sat on the floor. It was super casual. And basically, this man came in, and this is the perfect thing for this class, he told his story. And the way he tells his story is really about, one day I thought this and I did this. You know, I walked across town into a village. I taught at this lovely university, but I wanted to really see what poverty was like. He is an economics professor. And he sits down and talks to people who are stuck in this cycle of lending and are very poor. He listens to them. He hears what they need. He reaches in his pocket and lends like $24 total, and a whole village is helped. It's this fairy tale, amazing, magical story. And it's really, truly his story. And it's a story about how he did things that seemed so accessible and so doable. So I'm sitting there just like lightning bolt shooting through my system, like made sense to my head, made sense to my heart. The way he talked, this was huge. The way he talked about the people that he had met that were in poverty was different than anything I'd ever heard before. He talked about them with dignity and mutual respect, and as people who were already working hard, even though they were very poor, and it was this system that was keeping them poor, not them, not laziness, not all these other things that unfortunately sometimes we hear. And I loved it, and I thought, I want to go do that. And I decided I wanted to go do something like what he did. And I wanted to learn about microfinance, and I thought, those are my skills. I can sit and talk to people and listen, and I can reach in my pocket and lend $25. I could do that. I want to go do that. So a few months later, I'd quit my job here, and I went to East Africa with a nonprofit called Village Enterprise Fund. And they do $100 grants to entrepreneurs who, for various reasons, aren't yet ready for a loan, or there's no one else serving them because they live in an incredibly remote area. And there are other parts too, but that's the gist of it. Anyway, I go to East Africa. At this point in my life, I'd been married for 6 months to the boy that I fell in love with and moved out here for 3.5, 4 years later. So we're married, 6 months in, and I leave for this 3-month dream job to go from village to village to village. There's a new village every 2 to 3 days. I was by myself. but met up with volunteers along the way and interviewed entrepreneurs who had received this $100. It was the coolest 3 months of my life. It was the best. I would sit down with the goat herder and listen for an hour or two about, did they receive the money? What did they use it for? What was the story of their business? How did they use that $100? How did their lives change? And I sort of patched together this standard of living survey that included questions like, before and after the business, can you afford to put sugar in your tea? Do you sleep on a mattress or a reed mat? Do you have a blanket to stay warm at night? Does your family own mosquito nets? How many meals do you eat a day? Is it, and often it would be 2, milk, tea in the morning, and something, maybe beans and rice or something later in the day. How many times a week or a year do you eat protein? There were these details of their life to try to understand where they were and how they were choosing to improve their lives as things went well with their businesses, that just they gave me goosebumps. They were so interesting, so beautiful, and things came out of left field that I would have never expected about how they had chosen to change their lives. So for example, one family said, oh, well, as my business improved, I sent my first 2 children to school, and they'd never been before, but my 10-year-old has a disability and needed a wheelchair, so it took another 2 years for us to save up for a wheelchair, and then she was able to go to school too. Or, our kids, we sent some of them to school, but what we really wanted? We wanted a lock on our door because we wanted to feel secure. Or we really thought the best thing was for us to eat better because we were getting thin and losing weight and getting sick. Or the ways that they had chosen of their own volition to change their lives were all just fascinating. And not every story that I heard was a success story. Many of them had their flaws. I mean, not all the businesses succeeded. Sometimes the businesses were going well, but then someone got sick, and it was, do you buy more inventory for your business, or do you get the malaria medicine so your child doesn't die? And they would choose the latter. And sometimes they would choose the former. It just every day was just a whole range of emotions for me, and I became obsessed with these stories. I started in the evenings, it'd be me sitting in a hut somewhere with a candle, and what do you do in the evenings when you don't know anybody, you don't really speak? Yeah. So you'd hang out with the family as much as you could, but then before I'd go to bed, I would just write down everything I could remember of these stories that wasn't even on the surveys. And when I would get to an internet cafe every once in a while, I would send these stories to my friends and family on email. Once in a while, I would also be able to call and say, oh my gosh, check it out, talk to my new friend, the seamstress in Shore, Uganda, she's so awesome. And I'd hand the phone over, and with a little bit of English, she would talk to my mom, or Matt, or it was so fun. So anyway, you get it. I'm obsessed with these stories. And the other thing was, these stories were, as Dr. Eunice had described, they were stories of dignity and hope. They were different. It was not what I had expected exactly. Yes, people were suffering. Yes, there was need. But they were stories of triumph and story of effort and stories of people doing extraordinary things with this little bit of money and going above and beyond and working hard and having success. They were these beautiful, hopeful, intriguing business stories. So when I was sharing these with friends and family, and at that time, Matt, I was there for 3 months. He came over for the middle 2.5, 3 weeks of my trip, and he too was whoa, this is different than I thought. These are not the stories I expected to hear. These are not the people I expected to meet. This is so cool. We started to want to share these. So anyway, I'm going to start to fast forward really quickly, so get ready. So we started to share them with friends and family. Friends and family kind of would respond with, wow, Joseph Onyango, the goat herder in Uganda, sounds amazing. What's he going to do next? Are you going to go see him again? If you do, give him $100 from me, or lend him $200 from me, or whatever. People wanted to be engaged in specific ways. They didn't say, wow, what a nice story. I will write my check now to this big nonprofit, and that's that. And in my friends and family, no one's a big high net worth individual or big donor. Everyone has maybe 25, 50 bucks, 100 at a time that they can donate. And it's scattered, and a lot of it goes to church, a lot of it goes to the Girl Scout cookie thing. I mean, it's random, and people only have a little time to give. So anyway, even if they would have given their money, and no one was socially responsible investing, are you kidding me? No one even knew what that was. So no one does that I know, really, truly, or very few people. But at the time, that wasn't an option, so it was sort of what would they do? Would they donate money? No one really wanted to do that. And even if they would have, what a boring experience. Maybe you get a thank you letter, maybe, and that's that. Or you get a call at Christmas. So anyway, it wasn't fun. And the big aha moment, spring of '04, as I'm hearing all these stories, I ended up interviewing about 150 entrepreneurs, was, wow, these stories should be shared. And in fact, if more people knew these stories, 2 things would happen. We would see each other differently, which is huge, And people would be motivated to act, maybe they wouldn't, but I know I felt motivated to act from a very different place than I'd ever felt before. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. So the task became, how do we share these stories? And then the idea of lending seemed just appropriate because it was direct and real, and that was what people needed next, not a donation. These were business people. They didn't need a handout. They needed just this loan, microfinance, kind of the name of the game, to do the next part of the business. So spring of '04 had this idea to do this very small specific thing. Spring of '05, we had built a website. I went back to Uganda, handed a camera to our buddy Moses and said, hey, let's go visit. And we had 7 entrepreneurs that we've been in touch with for the whole year on email and stuff through Moses. Yep. Oh, so this is funny. At the time, since I was working in East Africa, I was learning Swahili and was kind of obsessed with the language, and this esoteric random dictionary online, apparently it means unity. I've yet to meet a native East African that knows this word, so it's kind of like the Chevy Nova waiting to happen maybe, but luckily it also means nice in Finnish, and it means, it's like a Native American word for a gathering place. But the idea was unity, right? That was our effort.
Hold on, Jessica, this is great news. Do you have the one on? Huh? Yo, Micah, you didn't come to the first day of class, right?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying my phone.
No, we like that. We like with the phone ringing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great news. Let me
I hung up.
You hung up? Okay. All right, so we'll get Micah right, but remember, I really like it when you turn on the phone, and the only thing I ask is if you work in one piece of learning into the phone conversation.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, no, it's so enjoyable, and that's the only thing people remember from my class. Honestly, it's so sad because everything else goes. So that was great news. Thank you very much. Everyone else can turn on their phones now. That would be perfect.
That would be fun. Okay, and I want to get to questions and answers because there's a lot. I basically love when it's a dialogue. So, what do I have next here? Yeah, that was obviously this is a slide that's 2 months old, but
can I just take a pause
yeah,
for a moment?
yeah.
I have actually a couple of things that Diego, thank him, and if anyone else is blogging about today, that would be great. Diego and I might take some notes. Is anyone else blogging today? Oh, great, thank you very much. So pressure's a little bit off, yeah, but I appreciate it. So I'd like to just sort of open it up. Any other things that kind of strike you about the story so far? Like how you got involved, how you're reacting, what you think is differentiated? Yeah.
I think the most important thing is how it enables people to see each other differently. And I mean, I've done a lot of work in East Africa too, and that's one of the things. It's like it's hard to tell people's stories in a way that engages people and makes them feel like they're talking to someone from their own culture, or allows them to put people from a different place in the world in their own point of reference, which is hard to do.
Like,
I'm really interested in how you started with these very larger, broader feelings of frustration, the injustices or the poverty that you were seeing, and were able to really zero in on people, stories, and as you did with the picture at the beginning of your presentation, go from sort of the vague, the raw, the negative, down to the specific and the positive.
so let me just build on that one. Another one that one of the most important things that you come from away from this class is thinking small. So again, remember when I talked to our friend Seth, and I said, what do you want to call your case on I feel? And do you want to talk about how you tell stories or the human condition? And he's like, no, I want to talk about how you think small. And so again, one of the goals of the class, just help one individual. Everything you should be doing is granular, and that speaks so much. There you go.
I was going to say that I think the story is great because there's a lot of emotions. So she says it's what excites me, it's people, or I was in high school, I was angry or scared, I didn't know what to do, then I was amazed. So I think those emotions really attract us to the story.
So later we'll be doing the Casablanca screenplay, and I'll be sending you all the Casablanca screenplay. I'll encourage you to get together with your cohort and watch Casablanca. And one of the things there is not only these micro threads or micro lines or micro stories within the larger whole of Casablanca, but it's the exact emotional mapping. So what you can do as you're watching Casablanca is you can literally just take some sort of like, I'm feeling this now and this now. And if you just draw that as you're watching Casablanca, it'll destroy the viewing experience. But you will have a much finer sense of what the emotional arc was and what actually happened, how you felt during that time. Abhishek.
Can we ask questions about Kiva?
Yeah, but actually, let's just take this moment to kind of reflect, and then we'll we'll do questions.
And I'll do 5 minutes just before we go into full-on question and answer, just to say, here's how it works, blah, 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 blah. I can do that real quick, so.
Right. Yeah.
I think the part about coming to help from a place of fear and guilt to a place of hope, like resonates strongly with me. I mean, growing up in India, these are people who would be like in the next village or something, and I would be like interacting with them on a daily basis. So one of the things I noticed after coming here to Stanford is that poverty means something so bad to a lot of people here, which I was never able to understand, because in my mind, everyone was aiming for the next step in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone didn't have money to put their second kid to education, her next aim was to earn that money to put that kid in education, and not that they should become Bill Gates or something. So it seemed to me like I was more different from them, because I was
You were looking for your next step too. That's really interesting.
So it's interesting to see like where you come from, where you initially had fear and guilt, and why am I so lucky and why are they not? And for me, that was something I never had. So it's interesting to make that.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a great observation.
I think one of the things that was interesting to me is you said the other ways, or more traditional ways of giving, weren't fun for people. That, you said fun, but like weren't actually really engaging for people that were giving money and sort of almost on the back end. Like they might be able to draw people into these stories at the beginning, but then maybe they get a thank you note or something
Yeah,
like that,
that
and then the
sucks.
relationship kind of ended. And so I think that's actually a point that it feels relevant to me in the context of these projects, is figuring out a way to make it not just a one-time kind of transactional relationship, but something that you can actually really engage with over time, and then hopefully, to your point, really encourage other people to get engaged.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Jessica just said, people give to people, right? So like independent of guilt fueling it or happiness or pride, whatever is fueling it, people give to people. So that notion of personal connection that we talked about last night is huge.
And you'll like this, 90% of people keep their money in the system. So people it's a hugely loyal group. People relend, and add to their portfolios. And it turns out, we can talk about this too, it turns out the loan, we didn't know this at the beginning. It's a very sticky tool. It's a very good tool for connectivity, because if I give you something, even if you're like great at giving updates and stuff, it's only so relevant. We all know that like my $25 a year ago probably still isn't having that same like fresh impact as it was. Like it's great, and there's other secondary and tertiary effects, but like really. But if it's a loan and you keep getting your $1.25 back every month or something, it's a very different feel.
Yeah.
I think the thing that stood out to me was the power of the detailed story, the really small things that you might overlook. And we're working with teenagers who are incarcerated, and just little things like giving them pencils to be able to write in the journals. I mean, that very quickly can turn into a weapon. And so there's a lot of, focus on counting the pencils, getting back. And I would never even think about that in my daily life with a pencil. And so then you start to think that there is some kind of survival mode where a pencil becomes this, tool for them, and they really want to have it and stuff. So the power of the details, and you spending so much time with them and getting down to the deeper levels or layers, it's really powerful. I think it's a good takeaway.
Cool.
It struck me how passionate you are about it. I mean, here you are, you're married for 6 months, then you go for 3 months to East Africa, and you're just like going from village to village to village. But you're so passionate about it, you're so excited about it, as opposed to being, it was really tough. You didn't mention at all, like, it was really hard to do this, it was hard, like, not to see my husband, or it was hard to go to all these different villages. You just talked about how passionate you were, and how that passion kind of moved on to your friends, like you talked to your friends on the phone, and they all would want to send money and want to help in some way. And I think that is kind of how passion builds. It actually makes me passionate about it, the fact that you're so passionate. So.
Cool. Good. Well, I mean, that's a whole other class, right? Like, but yes, good observation.
Yeah.
And I felt like you talked about the task at hand, like why you actually went to East Africa for like only a couple minutes. I almost like forgot like why you were there, but
right.
because you didn't go to like collect the stories, you actually went to like
Right.
field research for them. So,
Right.
I like that. I feel like a lot of people in your shoes could have just gone, done the research, come back with like, a couple like statistics to try to share with people, and that wouldn't have been as powerful as like trying to tell the whole story or collecting all the information.
Yeah, it's I forgot about that part too. Like that wasn't my assignment, but I loved it. And I remember asking Brian, I'm like, Brian, he's my boss and like amazing mentor, the guy that started the organization. I'm like, Brian, what if I like will you let me like come back and just spend some time writing these out and like making awesome case studies, and I'll take pictures, and like these would be really cool to share with people. And he's like, sure, whatever. And that, yeah, it didn't have anything to do with like analyzing the data, and like it was all in a nice Excel spreadsheet, but I didn't really like, it wasn't that exciting.
Combining those last two insights, I hope one thing, to get into the GSB, you probably spent some time thinking strategically about the stories that you told about yourself, like what made you unique, what made you you, right? You probably had a couple really concrete, detail-oriented, probably quite emotional stories, and then you probably got into the GSB, and I don't know the degree to which, you keep kind of going back to them as ghosts in your mind. But the purpose of this class is to reconnect you in some way, shape, or form with those essays that you wrote, because the story, so one thing that would be great in this class is if you have an arsenal of personal stories that defined you, and as you start to think about those stories and how they affect the organizations that you'll be creating, the more power you will have. Micah.
I was just gonna say what I liked about your story was that it wasn't condescending, and that we have you from the top and other people who come and talk about sort of how they got to where they are, and it's always like inspiring, but sometimes can be distancing because it's like, well, I thought of this like business model,
right.
like if you just think about it, or if you are smart enough, it sometimes can be the undertone to kind of like get to that.
No, I
And
so
so
hear you.
I
so hear
actually really appreciated that you didn't try to be the expert or say, I know everything about international development. I think bringing up Muhammad Yunus was great that he inspired you, but he himself is intimidating because he is such an expert in what he does.
Yeah.
And I actually found it very like personalized, and that you're like, I'm not here to tell you like everything is perfect, or that I'm know exactly what to do. I just sort of like tried to be a connecting point, and I also thought it was really not condescending about the low amounts of money. You mentioned your own family, that there weren't these, because sometimes people who are saying it have the capacity to give a lot more money, so it could be that even though you're inspired, you're like, yeah, but I don't have $2,000 or something like that of what they might be implying kind of in their backstory. So I like that you brought that to the forefront.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
This is really interesting.
The other thing you said is that as you were listening to these women or two, is that you framed it as stories of dignity and hope, and it could have very easily been framed as poverty and what they didn't have. And I think that when someone's listening to that, it's really, you want to get involved in empowering other people. So if you frame the story in a way that you're enabling, and they're capable, you kind of want to be a part of that. And so it's just kind of a contextual thing. I think a lot of times we see these stories on TV, and they have this really sad music, and it's black and white, and you just feel down.
Slow-mo, yeah.
You feel drained watching it. But here, it's like lively. You're like, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to help them. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, it's funny because when you said the only thing, you're like, oh, only thing people will remember about my class was like the phone thing, which I know is a joke. Like, I actually think that happens where I could even tell you could read the same information that maybe you'd see on this business profile, from before. But if you also include some of the other details, like that may be the only thing. Like I have this neighbor I've never met that has this bizarre sculpture in the yard. All I know about them is they have the bizarre sculpture. And sometimes the details that we throw out there, for better or for worse, sometimes like one really surprising one or something will stick, and everything else sort of gets lost. So I think it's got to be very careful, because like in that one business profile it said she has one orphan child from her brother. I mean, could have talked just about that, could have talked about a lot of different things that probably would have stuck, and it would have overshadowed other details. You got to be very careful what you reveal and what you don't.
Great. One last comment, and then I'll let you start
Sure.
the model and see if we address Abby's point.
Cool.
And that is really, as you start thinking about these ideas and how they affect your causes, keep thinking about the role of measurement. So, for example, Jessica mentioned that she just wrote down, she's just developed a little questionnaire, started developing, what was it before, what was it after. And so now you're starting to create your own ideas. I'd like you to keep an eye on any opportunities you have to measure the current state of being within your cause, et cetera. Because later on, you're going to have to talk to different constituents, and they want to see the effectiveness of what you did in this class or whatever. And you need to get a baseline, and it's too bad you go back and go, ooh, damn, I forgot to measure that. Another way to think about this is Jessica's focus of that one individual, and then she brought it back out. So that was an experimental manipulation, right? That basically provided context around a photograph. So now you have two conditions. One condition where you just see the face, and it's very similar to a lot of nonprofits, their appeals. And then another picture where you see the context. And the same emotions aren't evoked, the same context isn't there, so it's a manipulation. And if you, in your videos or your photographs or whatever you do, this reach others in your cause, if you keep an eye on experimentations and you create two conditions, one with a photograph and this is just a face versus a photograph with the context, or that's what a lot of you did with the Twitter, you sharpened the word, you made one word concrete, you started the sentence with a question instead of an answer. So play with experimentation and make sure you keep measuring, not only actions but impressions. So not only behavioral intent, how likely are you to do something, but what do you think of something? So keep your eye on measurement. You'll need that in the story.
Cool. So I can't not tell the 10-second story of this guy. This guy, and it kills me because over the years I have forgotten his name, but it was 5 years ago. I gotta go back and figure it out because it's context and real, and that's the whole point. But he had a second grade education, second, and he had 3 wives, living in Tanzania, had a $100 grant, supported 35 people on this fishing business with a $100 grant, where all he did was get new nets that didn't have as many holes, bigger holes in it to catch fish in this lake. They had, I think it was 4, maybe 5 chickens or turkeys running around. They of course gave me, because I had visited them for 2 hours, they wanted to thank me for coming to visit them and gave me one of their turkeys, which I regifted. I didn't, that's how I justified, because I didn't want to offend them. And so anyway, it was one of the best, these were like the best days of my life up until that point. I could talk for an hour just about this family. And there were 150 of those that I got to hear those stories over 3 months. So fast forward. We took a year, and I'm speaking in Rick Aubrey's class tomorrow, and I can tell you more of the nuts and bolts of doing the entrepreneurship thing and what we did and funding and all that stuff. But to fast forward, spring '04, we have the idea, research for a year. I applied to the DSP. My essay was on poetry. I wrote poems and said that my most important matters to me and why thing was finding your voice, and I wrote poems. That's what I did. I got into GSP. I knew I was coming in fall of '05. Spring of '05, we did a beta round, finally, where so it's a year later, we did 7 businesses. They needed a total of $3,000. We spammed our wedding list and said, what do you guys think? We don't know if it's legal yet, because we spent a year banging our heads against the wall saying, is this legal, and no one would, everyone was like, I don't know. People would physically back away from us in the room if we would talk to them and be like, yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be really hard, and really hard and really dangerous. You should call the SEC. They were just so terrified of this. Because this was so interesting too, actually, story-related stuff. We would say, we want to lend $3,000 to these 7 people, here are their names, in Tororo, Uganda, we want to do this. Can we do this? How do we do this? And they heard international peer-to-peer lending all over, that's scary. They heard this big thing. We'd say, no, we just want to start by doing this. How do we do this? But they would extrapolate it out and hear bigger things. Very interesting communication lesson for us. And also the language of innovation, we would talk for an hour and say our idea, and people would ask questions, and at the end they'd say, well, this is great, where do I donate? Or they would say, you're crazy, this is dangerous, or whatever else. We would say, we are not donating, we are lending. So it's interesting when you have a new product, new idea. We never said donate, we never said invest. We didn't even allow people to donate on the site for the first year and a half because people were so confused by this. We would only say loan, but people would hear something different. That was fascinating too. Lots of stuff. Okay, so we did our beta round. In October of '05, I'm here trying to survive accounting class and all the core stuff. We decide, it's 6 months into our beta round, we decide it's a success. We take the word beta off of the site. We call our buddy Moses, because no organization would work with us at this point. Because who were we? They thought it was a silly idea and really time consuming and wouldn't work. So we called our buddy Moses again and said, hey, you want to post another 12, 15 businesses? He said, sure. We write a press release about our 7 businesses that we funded, and we're like, we are so official, this is great. It's October of '05. November of '05, the blogosphere somehow picks up, a month later, picks up on this old press release that our friend from a Bible study wrote and just put on our site, totally random. And 300 blogs wrote about us in November of '05, including 2 of the 3 biggest blogs at that time, Boing Boing and Daily Kos, they're still big. So suddenly one day, not just our little friends and family were coming to the site, but 1 million people read about Kiva and all flooded the site. So we had tens of thousands of people coming. Matt's working at TiVo, doing his full-time job. I'm here, we're just doing this on nights and weekends. And suddenly all these people are coming, and we're like, what the heck is going on? Because I didn't know the blogosphere, I didn't read any blogs. Suddenly all these people are coming. So anyway, over the next month, other media picked up. January, 2 months later, the Wall Street Journal included us in an article with Grameen Bank, Waco Credit, some other big leader in Kiva. this is insane. We funded like 20 businesses. We don't deserve to be in this. But basically, the impression that people got because of the buzz in the blogosphere, and more blogs wrote, and these traditional media things were picking up, we seemed more real than we were. We still weren't even a registered organization. Again, just winging it. So Matt and I had this like come to Jesus moment where we're like, okay, one of us has to quit something. Matt quit his job. I almost quit the GSB. I'm glad I didn't, but we sort of got our act together and started to be real in like spring of '06. So anyway, first year, October '05 to '06, we did 500,000 in loans that year. We were flipping out. We had like 5 real partners. We were totally excited. Second year in the GSB, that's where things are in life. So that's first year, 500,000. Second year was 14 million. Third year closed, I think at like 45. Today it's at 56 million, and we do about $100,000 or more a day in these little $25 bits. There are lenders and entrepreneurs in 150 countries worldwide, and it's just grown really fast. Obviously, that's a big summary, but I can touch down on any other parts that you'd like to know. The way it works today is not us calling our buddy Moses, but we have lenders, obviously, that come to the site, browse these profiles. The profiles are posted there by microfinance institutions all over that go through this big we go through big due diligence and vetting process with them, give them an account on the system. Depending on what sort of rating we give them, we developed a rating system. If they're a 5-star MFI, according to us, maybe they have, X hundreds of thousands of dollars size of an account that they can fundraise each month on our site. If they're a 1-star partner, maybe it's 5,000 every month or 10,000 every month. And we monitor them and monitor that, and it's this huge algorithm with like 37 different qualities. There's a lot of science behind it too, which is fun. But basically, they have accounts, they post the profiles, they raise the money. It goes from lender to Kiva, Kiva to the MFI, MFI to that specific person, comes back with interest from that borrower according to the MFI. We don't micromanage. We choose only really good ones that we think are doing fair, good, socially, focused business with those clients. They pay back Kiva just the principal, no interest. So they keep all that interest, which is why it's valuable to them. They're saving 10, 15% on their cost of debt because they source it through us. It's also flexible, friendly debt from lenders that take the default risk and all sorts of other risk. And then we pass back the principal to you, the lender. So 70% of our revenue, if this is interesting, comes from this optional lender fee, where right when you check out, we say, thanks so much. All your $25 is going to the seamstress in Cambodia that you've chosen. All will come back if, / as she repays, which almost always happens. But would you help us pay our rent? And we finally, after like a year and a half, allowed people to start donating. We say, you're lending $25, would you donate $2.50? When people are comfortable with that price point, of lending $25 and seeing that go out the door, they're almost always comfortable with donating another $2.50 or $55 or whatever it is, 10%. So 70% of our costs in 2007 were covered by that, and that's just one of 5 revenue streams. We have float. At any given time, there are millions of dollars in our account going back and forth. We get interest on that. We do traditional fundraising. There's the business stuff to this too, and that's fun. But this is the site. You go, you click lend, you see a group, you click on them, you get the profile page like we've seen. This is a huge group, kind of an anomaly. If you'd scroll down, you'd see lenders to this group. One of the other things we do on Kiva, and I did make get slides, but I think we should just talk in 2 minutes. If you click on a lender profile, this is one of the most bare bones lender profile pages you'll see. One of my favorite parts on the site is when it says I lend. It's supposed to say I lend. We're going to change it. It's grammatically not as good. But I loan because, right? I lend because. And people say why. She just says because I can. Other people have these. They get on their soapbox and it's awesome. And they say what they believe and why they lend and why they feel privileged and what they love about Kiva and interacting this way. It's very cool. If you're interested, browse those. I love those. But basically, they have their own portfolio page to say, oh yeah, well here's my story. Here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing. And it's really, really easy. Our site is not rocket science. It's very bare bones, very simple, as you can see. And if you look under the hood of the site, it's very funny. It's patched together. I mean, Matt designed it, the first parts of it on nights and weekends when he was kind of learning to code on his own. It's scrappy. And I think that's actually part of our personality and our sensibility. This is important. I wanted to say this. I'll get to that. Journals, you can see the journal updates. So the stories keep coming. As the money comes back, you get updates with often a qualitative little update on, hey, greetings from Tanzania, guess what's going on here? You can read it. And I think right now we have for every loan, you always get the quantitative little repayment updates. And I think at any given time, we're working hard to make this go up and up and up, but we have these like really good, often they're paragraphs and paragraphs written by fellows. We have a fellows program, which is basically a repeat of my dream job from 4 years ago, where we send people out, you interview 150 businesses, and you blog about them. And you check on them, and you do sort of a soft audit and an update with these stories. And they see it through fresh eyes, and they tell other lenders of what they've seen and who they've met and what it's like. It's awesome. You take pictures. So anyway, about 20% of businesses, I think right now, that's our stat, have at least one of these qualitative journal entries. We want it to be much more. We also have lending teams. That's its own story. There's a Stanford GSB team. Join it. Join it. Okay, here's the deal. Our mission is to connect people through lending to alleviate poverty, for poverty alleviation. It's not, let's raise the most amount of money possible for microfinance. It's not, let's build this huge and powerful network of MFIs. These other things are happening indirectly, but it's not what we're about. We've turned down money when it doesn't allow us to connect human beings to each other. That's how it started. I spent a lot of time telling you that's how it started, and that's still the spirit of it today. When we get big corporations saying, we want to pump like $10 million through the Kiva system, we're like, oh, you mean by allowing your employees to come, each have accounts, and you're going to give them all the money as gift certificates, and they'll have this experience of choosing an entrepreneur and interacting. Do you want to do that? And they're like, no, we just want the money to go through the system. And we'll say, no, that's okay, thank you though, but we can recommend some other places to put your funds, or you can donate, but we're not interested. Because it would actually take away from our mission of connecting human beings to one another. I did create these other slides for the get stuff. So do you want to go there and structure a conversation that way, and then I can pull up slides if we want? Because I feel like I should stop there. I want to hear what you're thinking. It's already 11:15.
I would love to hear, what you think it was from October to November got 300 blocks. And you guys thought about what exactly?
Yeah.
Was it phrasing, was it the story?
I think so I've used this word like sensibility or brand. I don't know. I kind of like that word lately, and I'm just going to use it again. So that like sensibility, have you been to Witness's site? It's like this human rights site where they basically are like, here's what's happening out there, and they just like show it, right? They just show whatever it is, and it's often very scary or sad or painful, and those stories need to be told. But I think the way we framed the stories, even in the beginning, they were just so fun to read. I mean, I know I'm biased. I loved reading them. I think they were just fun to read. So even when you couldn't do anything on the site, blogs were still writing about it because it was this authentic. I think it was the stories. I'm only guessing. I don't really know. I think a lot of influential blogs picked it up. It was lucky, and then others started to buzz about it too. So I think the blogs encouraged other blogs, and mostly the other thing is it sounds crazy to say this now, but it was like a really innovative thing to do lending. Like you couldn't do that anywhere online. You could not lend money. It was a new thing. You certainly couldn't lend to another person like that. I mean, Prosper.com had launched, I think, November of 2005. Like they launched right around the same time that we had been finished with our beta round. So this was right around that time too. So it was like, oh, there's this new thing to do on the internet, lending to a person, let's write about it. So we were lucky because Prosper was launching, there was press about them. We were the international version of that. 2005 was the year of microfinance. Mohammed Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. Like there were all these things that converged where we became this interesting, oh, and by the way, here's how you can get involved. Because this was the first way that it was really made for individuals to actually do something.
But I think, what's the...
But I don't know, I'm... Micro-lending, microfinance? Microplace, which we started out together.
So let's drill down a little bit more into this question. Like how did they grab attention? How did they engage? So there's Kiva, there's
Microplace. And it's another, again, maybe we'll talk about it in class tomorrow, but we also actually started together. The summer before GSB I was in, we were all working as a group of 4. And then we decided, it was a great way for us both to decide who we were and who we weren't. They wanted to securitize the space. We wanted to do personal stories. We thought it was so similar at the time. We lived like 3 blocks away, Premal and Tracy and me and Matt. We thought we could do it together, and we sort of realized, no. Here's who we are and here's who we're not. But you can invest for a profit, like 3% over a few years, to a microfinance institution. So if there's a spectrum, and I do have a good slide for this, there's a spectrum of giving and lending, giving and investing, and institutional to personal. Kiva's at the investing/lending personal. Microplace is like investing at the organization level. And of course, there's socially responsible investing opportunities where you invest in like huger things. So.
Great. Yeah. So the personal story. It
wasn't Sensinian, you could do, whatever, 10 years, and it's just not gonna pick. We've been thinking we're working on the Kiva for Education model.
Oh yeah, we have to talk.
Yeah, and
I think I was someone in your
we're talking about the blog and Twitter and this and that, and this is really tough to make it happen. But then last Friday I had a meeting with a school in East Palo Alto, and so we were thinking about scholarships, for college, and suddenly he said, okay, and they said, let's think granular. They said, look, yeah, very good. There's what's her name? I forgot. There's a girl, and basically she needs $15 per week to get to school because they moved. So once you have that connection, I think, as you said, it can be a scrappy homepage or whatever, a very improvised blog, and something resonates with, with what someone was telling, with the passion that those pictures of Tanzania. So my point is that, sometimes one can get like too lost and waste too much time thinking about the technology thing but when we should, devote more time in the story, the passion, the connection, what is really driving you. Does that make sense?
When I was thinking about the get stuff, my whole analogy, which is dorky, but I'm dorky, I don't care. It was like, oh, this is like falling in love. Like, it's all about falling in love. And I think people fell in love with Kiva and it wasn't always rational. It wasn't always because we were doing things perfectly. We were kind of scrappy, throwing things together. Our business model in the beginning was really bumpy, but people loved it. So think about getting attention. Think of hopefully everyone here's fallen in love, right? Think of when you get that attention, I don't know, it's not always rational, but there's something that draws you, there's some chemistry that you're whoa. And then engaging, there's this flirtatiousness, there's some, I have my other slides, but this whole way of getting attention, I think people, they love Kiva, and I don't know exactly why. I love the entrepreneurs that I got to meet, and I think as much as you can just make that introduction, we love each other, people love other people. So if you can introduce them to people that surprise them and compel them and intrigue them, they fall in love, and they just want to even deal with the crappy site, and they don't mind clicking more times than is a Web 2.0 kind of best practice to get to it. And they don't mind patching stuff together or building their own tool because we haven't gotten around to it. And we're a good tech company too, but people do things in spite of barriers if they're in love and if they're just, like you're saying, they're passionate about it. So I don't know that we should be followed in a lot of things. We were ridiculous in our funding. Our funding was my student loans. And we weren't able to pay staff in the beginning, at least for the first year, right? So we would say, oh, we can't pay you, but you want to sleep on our couch and eat dinner with us? Would that help? So that worked. We couldn't pay someone to design our logo. We're oh, but this is really our dream. Do we have anything that we own that you want? So we gave the designer Matt's old guitar. This is how we did it in the beginning. We're not oh, well, we did the perfect funding strategy and went to angels. I didn't know what an angel was. Are you kidding? No. So I think when you have a dream, when you're passionate, you're in love, you throw a bunch of stuff out the window and you just get it done and you go for it and you. So I don't know.
And then notice when you say, listen, I don't have money to pay you for the great logo that you're going to create, but do you want to have this guitar? It does something different to the person who's giving it to you, right? It shifts the way they interact with you, and now the relationship between you is fundamentally different than any other utilitarian business exchange-based model. It creates time, it creates money, it gets people to say, I would like to give to you, and Jess was I didn't ask you to give to me, or it creates a whole different dynamic, this multiplier effect, which we call.
Yes.
Thanks very much for sharing the story.
Oh, it's totally fun, my pleasure.
So my question was about solving the accountability problem.
Yeah.
The very fact that it's a lending model.
The accountability, yeah.
It kind of, the money's up there, so it kind of solves itself. But in terms of partner selection and partner management, do you have field staff sitting there?
We have 17 full-time staff at this point, just focused on that. And we've kind of divided up the world. And I can show you, not to push your question away, but there's a lot of information on our website about here's what we check on, here's how we qualify, here's the vetting process, here are all our partners and how we rate them. It's all there. And it's kind of complicated to talk about, but I can show you. I'll send you, if you send me an email, I'll say, go here, and I'll send you links. Does that sound good?
Yeah, my question was.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
My question was did you have initial iterative experiences where you had to like remove some partners, or
Totally.
how did you like build that?
Oh, such a good, okay, wait, this is great. Yeah, we totally did. We've had fraud, only about like 4 out of about, like how I say about, that's terrible. We've had 4 cases of fraud out of 112 partners up until now. And also at the beginning, we went very quickly from at the beginning, like begging for people to work with us. We actually had 2 people just graduating undergrad at Stanford that are like, we think we can go start an MFI in like Nicaragua. And we're like, awesome, you can have all your funding through Kiva. Like we were just, come one, come all, let's use it as a big experiment, we'll partner with anybody, right? And now we like turn down most people, or most MFIs that come to work with us. So when we have had problems, we believe in this radical transparency sort of way of communicating with lenders. So when we've had fraud, we tell people, like when we know, we tell them what happened. We say, we're so sorry, you won't get your money back because someone like ran away with it or whatever happened. But we hope you'll keep lending, and thanks for hanging in there with us. This is hard work to do, we're doing our best. We really appreciate you like doing this wonderful social experiment with us. And people write back and say, thank you. They say, thank you for being honest. Thank you for telling us about the fraud. Keep it up, hang in there. We're totally gonna lend again. Like, we get thank you letters after we say we've had fraud sometimes. Like, it's wild. So let me show you a screenshot of, we say if we're like, oh shoot, you know, when this fellow visited the business, it actually wasn't the right picture. It was someone else. Oops, we'd say that. Like this is an example of if everything was wrong on the, you know, on the page. Like if a fellow showed up and they're like, what is this? The photo was wrong, the amount was wrong, the location was wrong. Like we would put it all there and we would tell people and just say, we're doing our best. And this doesn't happen a lot, so we also do a good job. But when it does, we just are really honest. And that people seem to really appreciate that. Because again, think of like turning the old nonprofit model on its head. Like everyone wants to always say everything's working great and perfectly and your money all goes there and da-da-da. We say, here's the reality. And we don't like, oh, this was a lot of the feedback in the beginning, like the first year when we were like asking anybody who would talk to us, hey, is this legal? Why don't you do this? What about this? What about this? And we'd cold call the SEC, which actually does have very good customer service, which is surprising. We would say, are you gonna arrest us? What'll happen? Is this, who's doing this, right? And people would say, well, you should really aggregate risk. That's a nice little like best practice. Sure, aggregating risk is good in investing. But we didn't want to do that. We didn't want it to be this, we wanted it to be the connection, so you don't aggregate risk. You bet on this person and maybe they fail. And other people would say, oh, well, you should really let people donate because they want a tax write-off. But these are people that give tens of thousands of dollars and want the tax write-off. I, for years, would keep my little receipts for like, I gave my sweater to Goodwill, it was like $13. Or like, I gave my $25. It never has mattered to my taxes, ever. I never made enough money, it doesn't matter. And so like, if you're really a donor at a $25 price point, you probably don't care about tax write-off. So it was interesting, because you'd hear these like logical, common sensey kind of good ideas about feedback about our model, but actually if you really got in the shoes of that person, if I'm a donor of $25, I don't care about the tax write-off. If I'm, you know, it was interesting. This is totally not a question, I'm still talking about it, I'm sorry. But it's been interesting to like hear these very good points made in very rational ways by logical experts, but to try to do something different anyway, because we thought, no, maybe not. Maybe they don't know like my friends and family and what they really want. So, did I answer your question though originally? Okay, awesome. Con.
One of the last slides were about how to market your business for entrepreneurs. I want to know if it is the case that people favor like people.
Totally. African women get funded 10 times more quickly than like Bulgarian men, for example. People get, we have this whole, talk about useful regression projects, woo! We know like if there's a kid in the picture, I'll tell you all the things that it gets funded more quickly. Child in the picture, the darker the skin color, the more rural the scene, if there's a visible physical disability, like watch out, that thing will go like, it feels weird to know these things, but it's really true. So we know a lot about lender/donor behavior. In fact, let me show you this. Good question. Okay, let's take these. So these are all people I've had the privilege of lending to. Popcorn seller in Samoa. Let me do this. This guy, he's great. Butcher in Afghanistan. So he's scowling. There's like meat hanging in the background. A lot of our lenders happen to be very, in the beginning at this point in time, they're like very liberal. You can imagine a lot of Californians maybe being vegetarian or something like that. They're not exactly turned on by like this picture. he's like sharpening his knives. He's kind of, right? If I said make up a story about this guy in the beginning, who knows what would have come out of our mouths, right? So he's kind of the underdog. So like I wanted to lend to him because I know he'd be slower. Although the good thing is he's in Afghanistan. So let's go, okay, well this guy, totally slower funding. I mean, he's in a pretty urban looking scene. Poverty looks very different to him. Being shut out of a financial institution is a reality for him because he's a gypsy, right, of Roma culture. It's un-PC to say gypsy, but you know what I mean. So he had a real need. It was just as real as this woman's need, Elizabeth's, right? But she strikes people so differently. And by the way, it's so funny when you're describing your son's like behavior, not atypical of like adult lenders, right? Or with kids in classrooms, often they'll tend towards like fluffy sheep, pretty animals in the pictures too. But really, kids and adults, I think, often make very similar decisions. What we hope is that we talked about which details you choose to reveal. So you can see about the entrepreneur and then about the field partner. Wouldn't it be great if actually you had like legit market forces at work here? Right now, every business on the site has always gotten funded. So there's not competition happening yet because everyone just gets funded. If you are over the bar, right, and you're a partner and you post things accurately. Wouldn't it be awesome if you had 6 potential borrowers all in, Western Kenya, and everything was the same except they were served by different partners, and the different partners would be able to say, well, we serve only women. Well, we have lower interest rates. We train people for like a year before we lend to them. Whatever it would be, it'd be interesting. I'm not saying better or worse, but wouldn't it be interesting if people started to make decisions more on that versus smiley face, kid in the picture, et cetera. So it's a big responsibility to know those things, and it's so tempting to want to hold off on posting any more Kenyan women until like these poor Bulgarian guys get funded. And it's still a matter of like a few hours versus a few days. Like everything gets funded really fast, but Jim.
How do you think about sustaining Kiva in the long term? I mean, I've worked with a lot of nonprofits over the years, and one of the issues is our society tends to have a little bit of a flavor of the month, a flavor of the year mentality, so that, domestic children's issues can be hot for a while, daycare, and that'll get a lot of funding, and all of a sudden something else. Do you think about if this may be a terrific organization building great success, but to what extent do you think about supporting the administrative infrastructure by building some long-term endowment or some sort of, how do you, 25, 50 years from now, how has Kiva sustained itself?
So
Not just help people around the world, but
totally.
sustain the mechanism for helping others.
Totally. So we don't want to be around if people don't want to do it. It's like a business that says, how can we always guarantee we'll sell our product? Well, if people don't want to buy the product anymore, we don't want to sell it. So maybe it won't happen. I hope it does. I think it will. I think we'll evolve. We're nimble and flexible and act quickly, and we iterate. And I think we have the right values in place to be able to change with the times kind of thing. But in terms of actual finances, we have 5 revenue streams. The one was the optional donation from lenders, which I said, that may go down over time with relending, who knows. The other one is float interest as the money goes back and forth, and we do have like this for-profit part that holds the lender's money. It's invested in money market funds. Like we're good investors with that. 3, and these are smaller, but they're interesting. 3 is breakage on gift certificates. It's kind of high. Hey, that's us. 3 is breakage on gift certificates. I could talk more about that if you want to, but it's basically you never use your gift certificate, we reabsorb it. And in that category is actually unused credit too. We're starting to implement that. If it's sitting there for 2 years, we'll absorb it back if you don't relend. 4 is like normal fundraising, which we're getting better and better at, like getting grants from Skoll and Draper Richards and whatever, and individuals. And 5, what's the 5th? Oh, well, so we've done actually real services for businesses. So for example, real actual technically, revenue for services. So we had a small business credit card company come to us and say, hey, we'd really love to have our credit cards be used and have people get Kiva credit instead of get like airline miles or something. Can you help us design that? They paid us a bunch of money to design this thing that actually results in more loans and more everything anyway. Everybody wins. The other thing is, though, we had not even begun to touch, like our debt capital is so good for MFIs. They save, like I said, 10-15% on average cost of debt through us. We haven't even begun to turn that valve on. We could charge them interest. We have all these optional other revenue streams that we have kind of in the wings that if we want to, we could do. We don't even think we'll need to. And
Let me add on, Jessica's so modest. I think it was Jonathan's team were playing with the idea of contests, right? Weren't you talking about contests, you can actually make a business these days working with content.
Yeah,
so
you
for
can.
example, I don't think, so they won the second prize at Members Project, one of the best well-run contests out there. Just go check out American Express Members Project. Phenomenally well done. Alex is an undergrad here. He's working with who?
It's JP Morgan.
JP Morgan. They're giving away $25,000. I said this is one of the most fascinating microlink companies out here. Like, come here. Like Google 10 to the 100. That project. They're giving away $10 million. You go there. You sign up this month with your little project. I'm sure that their Kiva's like at the top of their radar. I mean, it's amazing how much. There's people actually coming at you through contests, in and of itself.
And it's funny because we thought from the beginning, I had worked in nonprofits before, really only nonprofits before school, and it was like, we don't want to spend all our time fundraising, so we didn't want to do it unless we could build on the revenue streams. And additionally, what did I say about this? Oh, this is crazy. This is another whole conversation, but we're more profitable as a nonprofit than as a for-profit because our business model includes all these subsidies from, like PayPal. Early on, we're like, PayPal, this is another part too. PayPal, would you please waive all our transaction fees? That would be so awesome. They'd never done it for any other organization before, but they did it for us. That saves 2-3% on the $56 million that's gone back and forth. Like, huge for our business model. We could have been for-profit. We almost were for-profit. We decided it was better and we wanted to do this. We didn't want to get rich. We wanted to do this, and we knew that we could do that and have a really good, more profitable model as a nonprofit because of all the goodwill and other stuff that you get. So, I can't see name tags. Sorry, Dana.
I'm curious more about the storytelling. There's other things you
Sure.
kept it very simple with one photo.
Sure.
Whatever the person chooses to write. There's like things like videos and multiple
We are gonna
photos.
this summer.
Okay, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on, do you think that'll add additional value, or is this enough to tell a story from what you've seen?
I think there's a sweet spot here where it's enough that people can absorb it, it's enough to kind of get the idea of it. You have sort of a number of ways of absorbing information. You have the picture, you have the narrative, you have the bullet points like name, location, business amount, whatever. Below that, as the story unfolds, you again have like bullet points of repayment on this date, or the journals. I think it's been adequate, and actually that's a very important like value for us, like being scrappy, being iterative, like it's good enough, throw it out there, see what happens, add to it if you need to. This has been sufficient, even though there are a lot of other websites out there, giving websites, all kinds of websites that do, they have, I mean, go to Global Giving, they have like every piece of information you'd ever want. And I know, I mean, they're amazing, but like, I think too much information can be really bad. Like, I know for me, for Global Giving for a while, and they've adjusted a lot of different things. You would see projects that were $3,000, you'd see projects that were $300,000. You'd see 4 tabs of information about the project. You'd see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of projects on every different topic. Like, they are the portal, and they're the leaders in this. Like, they did it first, like the big project-based giving site. But for me, I get a little lost in it. We have our fellows they have all flip videos and stuff like that, and they have the fellows blog is really interesting too, because they're each their own champion. Lenders can be their own champions with Kiva. Everyone has their own little place to expand and put more detail if they want, and you can go find that pretty easily. But were you gonna say another question?
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up with the video specifically, you said you're going into.
Yeah, so we just basically have armed our fellows. At any given time, we have a few dozen fellows out in the field daily, like adding more info from businesses and stuff, and we've given them good video cameras, and they're just gonna I'm sure they're gonna like blow our expectations, like just go above and beyond, and include really interesting stuff.
Let's do 2 more questions over here. Shall you okay with holding ours?
Hi.
Jonathan?
I'm just curious, you talked about potentially going into, starting this as a for-profit. Do you
Yeah.
have any sense of how much that matters to the people that are actually on the site? Like, does the fact that there's a for-profit, or there could be a for-profit element, would that detract from your basic value proposition to people that use the site, or do they care about that?
I think for better or for worse, lenders would have, all along the way, would have been less willing. And we did in one survey like 2 years ago say, hey, if we were for-profit, would that change how you interact with us? And a lot would have dropped off. Now, we think it's like a tax code, not a religion. You can still do the exact same stuff, and it's just what happens with your profit. You can do the same thing in the world, but I think, yes, there's this spirit of trust and, oh, I get what your intentions are because you're a nonprofit. It's so clear. We wanted to just keep it that way.
And how do you communicate that you're a nonprofit to users? Because I imagine if it's just a tax code thing, maybe there's no change to the
Right.
site, so does it even really matter to people? Do
Right.
people search to see if you're, you know,
Well, when you
501c3?
check out, you see, and there's like a, you know, you check a box because I've read this and I understand I'm taking on default risk. I understand this isn't tax deductible. Like, we give them the information right before they check out. But yeah, up until that point of the transaction, I mean, we would tell them. We wouldn't go do this in a sneaky way, and I don't think we'll ever do it. I hope we don't ever do it because I don't think it's necessary. But yeah, I think you couldn't tell. You probably couldn't tell in a lot of ways if we, in the back end, made that switch.
Let me just add on, and we actually have a good 5 minutes.
Okay.
Did anyone find out when the formal end of class is? So everyone.
Oh, sorry.
Really? Okay, she's right. Damn. All right. Well, I will always try and end at 11:30, which is proper because that's when the class is to end. So forgive me for going over this time, but I promise to give it back. We'll end 15 minutes early on Friday. I wanted to add on to this .org.com. So Cassie and I have a stream of research with another individual, Kathleen Vos, and what we do is we manipulate whether people are introduced to organizations as a .org versus a .com. And what we find is 2 or 3 effects that are really interesting. First, .orgs are highly associated with being warm, inspirational, engaging. People want to work there. They are seen as totally needy. People do not want to buy products there. This is in general, not.
Yeah.
When you say World of Good is a .com or Mozilla.com or Google.com, whatever, when you give people information, well, it doesn't apply so much to Google and Mozilla because they're out there already. But when you teach people about World of Good as a .com, they think competitive, efficient, effective, profitable, and so greedy. Like cold, caring only about money, got nothing. So what's happening is that people have stereotyped, if you will, these 2 types of organizational structures. Not realizing, of course, that warmth and competence are 2 dimensions that are orthogonal to each other, and you can own this space of being highly effective but also inspirational. And I think that that's what you're seeing at Kiva, but you need to have those measures in there. You need to have the science behind, the rigor behind, the business revenues for the long haul, for people to understand that it's going to stay. You'll be hearing from Hope Lab later on. Hope Lab is actually based on our research going to come up with, this is the remission video, shoot 'em up DVD game targeted to kids with cancer. Hope Lab is actually coming up with a for-profit arm because of this very problem. Because when people start to learn that it's a .org, there's a whole set of associations. You see social enterprise. You see the nature of this class is about busting through those stereotypes and creating new business models that blend the fact that you can be effective in an incredible way, but also more than inspirational. Randy has done remarkable work with the Barack Obama campaign, and I think you see also there something that can be both inspired as well as truly effective. So throughout the class, we'll be continuing to seed ideas and examples on that. Yeah?
Did you do any research on something more ambiguous like a .net, which is used by both nonprofits and for-profits, and focus more on like the content of the actual site?
No, but we now have a new control group.
I
Excellent.
think that would be really interesting.
Okay, great. And one final question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it seems like you hit a critical mass with, the lenders, and you did a lot of that through, probably a lot of word of mouth, right? You described that.
If blogs count as that. Do you think blogs count as that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you started with the blogs, and now you can do something else. So from here on out, what's kind of the next step in terms of social, technology moving this forward?
Yeah, so we launched 2 features about, I guess it's like 4 or 5 months ago at this point, maybe 6, at the same time that had last night at like 1 a.m., I went to the site and I saw this. This happens sometimes, and this is a good thing. We run out of loans. This has been the mode of operation for us for half of the time in 2007. We needed to cap loan volume at $25 because we had too much traffic. And then we direct people to very simple other actions. But anyway, we build tools. Well, the 2 features we launched were group lending, so you can lend in teams, and then also we did this liquidation of partial credit. So basically, instead of, if you lend $25 over a 9-month loan term, before you would have to wait until all those little bits came back. You'd know they were coming back, but only at the 9-month point could you access your money and then relend. Now it's like your $1.25 comes back. If you want to top that up and relend today, you can, and we give it to you right away, which took money out of our accounts, which took away from the float revenue stream. Anyway, our point is to keep it sticky and active and have people lend. So we have these features that encourage people to lend in new ways and be their own kind of champions and take it upon themselves to like do a group lending project for this wedding or this birthday party or this team or company or school or whatever. But additionally, we just have very basic tools, really none of them rocket science, to allow people to spread the word really easily. So as soon as you click, done with my payment or something on PayPal or whatever, the next screen you see is, hey, take 30 seconds and send an email to a friend of yours to also lend to this business right now. We do that. We have all these other tools for people to share. We have lenders that they're ahead of us. They go above and beyond and create things that we're like, that's a really good idea. So I have one other screenshot I really need to show you. Great. So Kivapedia, this is one of many sites that people have created. Our staff did not create this. And if you look on the side, Kiva links, Kiva Friends, Kiva MySpace. Somebody wrote to us one day and they're like, oh, good news, I got a really good office space for Kiva in Second Life. We're having an office warming party next week. You should all stop by. And we're like, are you on Second Life? Okay, thank you. So lenders go do this, and I think it's because we're open with our brand and we say, take the logo, do what you're gonna do, have a fun party, like the Adrian Graney thing. It's so funny. We like learned about it the night it was happening. We're like, dude, you didn't even invite us. People do things because they love it and they can feel ownership and do it themselves. There's Kiva TV, 24/7. You can go watch like videos about Kiva if you want to. Kiva Podcast, Kiva Store. Someone else did the Kiva Store and said we should make t-shirts with Kiva's logo and tote bags and stuff. Our lenders just go do this. I think it's because they're in love. I think it's because they love it. And we certainly don't lock up our brand and our materials. We spread them out. We have discussion boards. We say, what do you think? Use this, use this. So we empower our lenders. We encourage them and we say, go team. It's like art, right? You look at it and you decide what you think it is and then run with it. We're not trying to own it too closely. We think it's a movement that everyone can kind of define and do what they want with.
Right. So I'm going to introduce Randy in 1 second, but I'd like to thank you so much.
My pleasure.